Welcome to Sharing is Caring, a podcast brought to you by Care Dallas. I'm your host, Fritz Deichert, a recovery coach, a board member, and someone who's personally walked through the path of addiction, education, and healing. This podcast is our window into the world of addiction, recovery, prevention, and everything in between. Each episode, we sit down with real people, survivors, parents, professionals, artists, educators, and leaders from right here in North Texas, who are willing to share their stories, their truths, and their hope. This isn't about judgment, it's about understanding, it's about connection, and most of all, it's about care. Because at Care Dallas, we believe that when we listen, we learn, and when we talk openly, lives change. So wherever you are on your journey, we're glad you're here. So let's start. All right, welcome in episode 6. Our guest today is Jesse McCraw. Jesse, thanks for coming on.
My pleasure, absolutely.
Yeah, so we haven't talked about any of this. We're just going to wing it.
Yeah.
Jesse and I are good friends. Jesse works in my industry. He works for Driftwood
Recovery.
It's a inpatient facility outside of Austin. That's enough about Driftwood. So we were just talking outside, Jesse, with my mom. So you're born and raised in Austin?
That's correct. Yeah.
Did you grow up playing sports?
I did. Yeah. So I had a very fortunate childhood where I had a street that I grew up with a bunch of kids my age, and we played everything, right? So early on, I got into organized baseball at the age of 4. I definitely would still refer to it as my first love. Played baseball what I would consider my entire life. And then when I made it to like middle school, I played basketball and football and pretty much anything that they would let me.
Just to give the audience like reference, what year was this?
Okay.
1950.
Sure. Yeah. Class of 2003.
Okay.
So
all right.
Big 40 this year.
Oh, wow. Okay. Big
Yeah.
40, and then you celebrated your 10th wedding anniversary this year?
Yeah. September 19th, Catherine, my wife, and I celebrated 10 years of marriage, which is pretty amazing.
Wow. Yeah. Congrats. Cat's awesome. Okay. So your story's very, I think, unique, and I think we're going to jump probably quickly into it.
Sure.
I told you I didn't really have a game plan, but I think just now I've kind of established, let's just go. So you're in recovery.
I am.
Okay, how long?
I celebrated 16 years this August. Thank you.
Sober Jesse can drive.
I can.
Okay. And I'm gonna kind of kick it off. We'll go back and forth probably in time.
Sure.
One of my favorite memories with you, and we've played a lot of golf. We've been on trips. You've put up with a lot of my bullshit.
Correct.
Yep. And so we were playing golf with a kid named Andrew Petrozelli.
Yes.
I think at the time he was
16.
16.
Yeah.
So 4 or 5 years ago. Andrew plays for SMU. And Andrew not grew up around me, but when he was younger, we played a lot of golf together.
Right.
So he knew about my sobriety, and he's heard some crazy stories. And he'd also played with other guys in the field, Lee Spencer and some other people. And he always asked them about their lives. So I remember we were walking up 17. And we were walking, and he looked at you and said, Jesse, so did you go to rehab and get sober like Fritz?
Right.
He's 16. To which you responded, no, I got sober in the penitentiary.
Correct.
And so I kind of want to jump into that because you are maybe one of the most caring, kind, soft, loyal, caring people. And not to judge a book by its cover, but everyone does. You're lying to
Totally.
Judge people.
Totally.
And so when you hear that, it's I remember Andrew kind of looked at you as a 16-year-old and was like, whoa.
Yeah.
And so why? What happened?
Well, I first want to honor the compliments that you just gave me because we rarely get that from you, or I rarely get that from you. So it's a really honor to hear such nice things come from you. No, I'm kidding.
That's a lot.
It was when I told that to Andrew, I mean, I can still recall his reaction to this day because he just went ghost white, right?
16-year-old kid.
And there was definitely a part of me knowing I was talking to a 16-year-old who's going to be a professional golfer, right? Completely different lifestyle. I knew there was some shock value there. So the way that I told him, I was like, nope, I got sober in the penitentiary, and just paused and waited for a reaction and just went ghost white, and he didn't know what to say. And that's my experience often when, the reality is like I'm the only person in my family, my entire family that had been in trouble whatsoever. So I get the perspective of like, not everybody knows someone who went to prison, and so that is a more common response, especially someone who knows me today as a man in recovery, as, this professional that I've turned into, this husband. They don't ever suspect me having had this experience, right? And so there is some joy that I get when I get to kind of like jab somebody with the truth, and
your reaction with Andrew was ghost white and kind of dead quiet, and almost him look at me. And again, this is a 16-year-old kid that grew up in private school playing golf.
Right.
And I think at the time, probably the most, like the maybe wild person he knew was me.
Correct.
Right, but that's
still true. You're still the wildest person he knows. But
yeah, okay. I was the most different human here.
Right.
Very sheltered.
Right.
And that's not a bad thing. But then you drop that. So.
But that's to my point, right? Like, I have shared it with enough people to understand that that's a pretty common response. But at the same time, because of the experience that I had, which led to what my life looks like today, like, I don't talk about it with any shame or regard, because that very experience is what, so to say, catches people's attention, helps them connect with me, helps them normalize the experience to a way in which it's like, oh, wow, people can still change their life in spite of their past.
Right. I think it's also probably why you just said you have 10 years of marriage, also probably have 40 years of life.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I just wanted to kind of start with that. It's one of my favorites. Andrew and I still talk about it. Right? If he's playing golf or just randomly say, "How's my guy Jesse doing?" And
that's cool.
All bonded right there. Okay, so we're gonna go back now. So obviously in recovery, we're gonna get to why you went to prison. Just when did you start? When did the using begin? Like, not just seeing kids. Like, going.
Yeah, I partied a little bit in high school, but compared to the average bear in recovery, you could definitely say that I started later, because I did my, slight partying in high school, but it wasn't until I started playing junior college baseball and got to see like the college party life, and just the exposure to so many more substances available at reach, right? Which is when, I always had the mentality, I never thought that I would be a statistic and like try something once and become addicted. So I was willing to try anything, right? And so it was around like 17, 18, 19 that I really started getting into it more. And then it just so happened that after my freshman year of playing baseball, I took my next year off, and I lived with a couple of buddies from high school and one of the guys from my baseball team. And that apartment is what became like the party spot, right?
Where'd you go to college? Where was it?
This was at ACC, and then I went to UT Brownsville that next year after my party year, as I like to call it. But those first 2 years after high school is when I started getting exposed to a lot of different substances and just really, got out of my parents' house and started partying pretty hard.
Okay. Did you face consequences, whether it was with family, with school, with performance in sports? Were there any early, you started late? Sure. And usually I feel like when people that do eventually end up in recovery that started late, it's almost like they make up for how it was. It started at 15, let's say. Like, did you?
Yeah, totally. I mean,
consequences? Or?
So, I do want to add, like, I am definitely like the eternal optimist, and that perspective has allowed me to have a very easy experience in recovery, because I can always find like the good side of things. I can always move forward. I can find the learning lesson. But I share that now because even when I was partying, things would happen, but I wouldn't necessarily think that they were the worst things in the world. Looking back at them now, yes, I had tons of consequences. Did I recognize them at the time? No. Like, second semester of my freshman year, I completely stopped going to school, right? Because of partying and chasing girls and whatnot. But in the back of my head, I had a coach in high school that told me, like, dude, you're a college baseball player. Like, you don't have to go to class. And so that was the mind frame of like, oh, well, that guy was wrong. He gave me bad information. I do have to go to class, which led to me taking the next year off, right? I pretty much had it all incomplete my second semester of school. There's that. I mean, multiple wrecked cars, right? But it was like, oh, I'm okay. I got the car home. The car's going to be taken care of. no problem, no harm, no foul, right?
And your family grew up supportive, loving, caring.
Very, very. I mean, unfortunately, knowing what I know about like the family system, and how it's affected by addiction these days, I had a very unique, but a fairly unique experience where my parents just kind of let me do whatever. And as long as I made it back home, clean slate, right? And it was very much don't ask, don't tell. And so therefore, I thought I was getting away with everything. They knew exactly what was going on, but as long as I made it home safely, they were okay.
Okay, on the side. So how old were you when you lit the field on fire?
That was freshman year of high school.
Okay.
Yeah, sober.
What happened? Oh, sober.
Sober.
What'd you do?
It was Y2K, okay. little age reference, 14 years old. A little Roman candle war with a couple of buddies in the neighborhood, and being in Central Texas, winters are dry. So one of the Roman candle shots bounced off the street, landed in the grass, and I was like, oh, no problem. I went and jumped on this little fire, and when I jumped on it, it literally did a full circle around me and spread, and then we were, 30 yards from what we call a forest, which is just a patch of trees. And that whole 5 acres of trees caught on fire. And again, I'm like, run to the house, act like nothing happened, just like, oh, there's fire trucks down the street. What's going on there? But unfortunately, what I didn't know, right, is the house that backs up to that land was literally fighting the fire off with a water hose, right, to keep from spreading to their house, And then, I mean, that even in itself is like such an analogy of addiction, right? Like what you can't see and how badly it could affect somebody else.
So did you get caught?
Yeah, got away with it. Didn't get a ticket,
All with your parents? Just kind of whatever.
Yeah.
What'd you do this for?
Probably got grounded. I was always grounded.
Right.
Yeah.
So loving family, caring, but kind of let you just free for all, do what you wanted.
I mean, they definitely let me know how much they loved me. They definitely supported me on everything. I mean, my dad left work so many times to bring me my cleats or my belt or my jersey that I left at home on game day. I mean, and that's where I, like, looking back, it's like, oh, they could have really taken an opportunity to curb my behavior if they were a little bit more disciplinary. But they catered to everything that I needed.
They might not have known any better.
No, they didn't. I mean, I'm the firstborn, I'm the oldest of 3, and, I was definitely...
You were a good athlete. You probably
good athlete.
Had some leeway to get away with things.
Yeah, I mean, I was overall a good kid, right? Happy. The eternal optimist was started at a very young age. But just, they were at my... dismay, right? Like they would do whatever I asked them to.
Yeah. Okay, so school goes poorly. You take a year off. Mm-hmm. What'd you do for the year?
Literally threw parties every single weekend, and that's when cocaine entered my life. That's when Xanax and mushrooms and ecstasy and, anything that I could find. Had a couple of drug dealers sleep on the couch just to get free dope from them. Just started really hitting it hard.
In a theme, I want to, point it out for me to recognize is, I know, but family systems, a lot of times, that's been a theme in these with people that have come on that are in recovery.
Totally.
Have had mental health problems. And so, were your parents supporting you this year?
Not necessarily, not for the most part. I'm sure they would give me money if I needed it, but I had a little job at the Texican Cafe, shout out, one of my favorite places in South Austin that you've been to a couple of times with me. But, just doing some expo work, right? Working just enough to...
Get by and party.
Yeah, exactly. Keep my family off my back.
This is it while you were at ACC?
This is, I wasn't going to school at all.
You had gone to UT Brownsville?
No, I had not. No, this is in Austin, Central Austin. Just living with a couple of buddies in like the college apartments,
So you're partying and you move and, just from my experience with you, you're very, you talk about when you have issues, whether it's with coworkers or with friends, family, with Kat, with anybody, within yourself, anxiety, whatever. While this was going on, did the optimism go away and other stuff sneak in? Were you in touch with, you're very in touch with how you're feeling, you're very self-aware.
Yeah.
How was that? What was that like?
You know, there were, I when you bring that up, I specifically remember like doing coke with a couple of buddies, right? And Nirvana was playing in the background, and I just lost it, right? I just started sobbing, and my buddy, like literally, like I didn't know exactly what it was, right? It was just I even in the moment, I was like, man, I gotta stop doing so much ecstasy. Like I'm really sensitive right now. Like, you know, it was like I was recognizing what I was doing to my brain. But even my buddy who brought the coke over was like, hey man, maybe you shouldn't be doing this as much, right? Like maybe you should take a break. But outside of that, no. I mean, as long as there was planning or a party to look forward to, there was no touch with what I was experiencing, right? It was all just to live for the next experience.
Okay, so I just kind of want to jump ahead now.
Yeah.
I think, I've known you for how long?
Almost 7 years, yeah.
I met Jesse when he had very short hair.
And not as much gray.
You have beautiful.
Can I get credit for that?
Gray,
Yeah.
with beautiful, lush hair.
Thank you.
Abby asked you if you blow dried it this morning.
No.
You said no, but he lied, babe.
I woke up.
I heard, yeah, he's been up since 6 a.m. doing his hair. Woke me up. So you're partying, stuff's getting out of control. I want to talk about, kind of what led up to sobriety. I don't think you're not scared to talk about it.
No.
I don't think you do talk about it because people don't necessarily ask you.
Yeah.
I had Gilbert Freeman on, and he had 2 sons die.
Yeah.
He says people are almost scared to bring it up, right?
Right. And when I listened to that episode, I very much related to the fact, and him and even Robin, right, where there's this experience of like where people know what you've gone through and they're timid to talk about it because they don't want to make you uncomfortable. But it's the exact opposite, right? Like when we were sitting with John, and he brought up my prison experience. And Andrew, when we walked out of that conversation, was like, hey, man, that's wild that he was so interested. And I was like, dude, I love that. Because ultimately it allows me to talk about myself, right? My favorite subject, But the truth is like, that is my experience. There's no two ways around it. And it changed my life and it made me who I am today. But even more so, there is the aspect of like someone just taking interest in your experience is an honor, right? It is.
Well, I think a lot of people, when they talk about their recovery journey and their story, we're not very unique. Most people in recovery, like we got sober because something happened, or then we were forced, or we had the aha moment, but. A lot of times it's people like to hear about the party and the wild times.
Sure.
You kind of glaze over the depression or any of the other stuff. Because I think even with me, I read the room. A lot of the room doesn't want to hear about how dark it got for me.
Yeah, and I mean, when it comes down to it, like that year, let's call it my my sophomore year, it was just the beginning, right? Like there wasn't that preceded a lot of the darkness, right. But even like when you talk about. When you mention how I don't necessarily talk about recovery, I'm 16 years down the road. In the last couple of years, I've had this really cool realization of like, I'm not the same person I was, especially, at 22, 24 years old when I was partying. But even more so, like, I'm not even the same person I was when I was 5 years sober, when I was 10 years sober. And that's such a cool experience to realize, like, because, when we get into recovery, we're taught a certain set of disciplines and we're taught how to live life differently and it works. But at the same time, like if we continue to live the same life that we did in early recovery, like we're really stunting ourselves from a lot of emotional growth, a lot of personal growth, a lot of spiritual growth, because it's such a limiting experience.
People that are almost miserable in recovery. And when I said you don't talk about it, I think, you're right. I don't think you necessarily talk about recovery as much. I think you walk it, right? I think people realize that.
I know.
I do think that what I meant was that people hear you went to prison and that's kind of the end of it, right? Oh, man. And then you got sober and then here we are. But I think I kind of want to jump to it. Just sure. I do think your story needs to be heard.
Yeah, thank you.
I think that again, where you are now, like the
16 years sober Jesse is so different, yet you needed what happened that got you there.
100%. And I'm not naive to that, right?
So what happened? Why?
Yeah. So, as I referred to often, I ran the streets for a couple of years, got an opportunity to play baseball again at UT Brownsville, lasted one semester, right? Got kicked out of the dorms within the first month. Pretty difficult living across the street from Mexico, right? But regardless, so many other people were successful. And then so I came home after that semester, and a whole set of circumstances led to that. But I realized, like, okay, time to start living life, right? Time to get a job, time to take care of yourself. And the next couple of years proved just how incapable I was at doing that, right? Because I had this fantasy that I would be the guy, like, having an 8-ball in the bathroom on the weekend with kids running around the living room, right? Like, that's how much I enjoyed cocaine, And so I never thought that it was the issue, But if you look at that experience, right, where I had a couple of buddies that we ran with, pretty tough. And, it was one of those experiences where I just started crossing lines that I never thought I would cross, whether when we couldn't find any cocaine and we started smoking crack, right? And then when we couldn't find any baking soda to cook crack, I found a needle, and then that needle led to the next 6 months of my life, And it was during that time, like, I knew, I was consciously aware, like, what is going on with your life? Like, these are things that you never thought you would be even close to doing, primarily because of who my parents raised me to be, right? Like, I was even aware of that. Like, this is not who your parents raised you to be. But then it hit me. It had been 2 summers that I hadn't been on a baseball field. Again,
First time
since I was 4 years old, right? And that's when I was like, what has happened to your life? And so I got this cool gig that I started umpiring high school baseball. It's like, as long as I'm on the diamond, I'm going to be okay, right? And that led to a coaching opportunity. And so I started coaching this 12U team out in Dripping Springs. And that was the coolest thing I'd ever done in my life. Like, I was aware of how cool this opportunity was, because at the time, like, very similar to the life that we live today, like, being able to share your experience and help somebody get better is what I believe guys like you and I are created for, right? And so, at 21 years old, 22 years old, that was the absolute coolest thing I'd ever done in my life. But nothing had changed outside of the batting cages and on the baseball field, right? I was still...
2 lives.
Yeah, and now, unfortunately for me, I was making consistent money for the first time in a couple of years, right? Which doesn't help. And so, like, an actual 2-week paycheck, felt like I was living like a king, and so that just means I could do more of what I actually want to do. And so in that coaching experience, I befriended a really good dude from San Diego, right? I was 22 at the time, he was 27. And so he felt as old to me as I do to you right now, right? He felt like a completely different generation and had lived a full life that I'd never experienced. He was a semi-pro baseball player and had even gotten me back into the mind frame of like, hey, we can go play semi-pro ball if we want to, if we train for it. But probably not.
No, I mean, no, that was not a dig, shockingly.
Shockingly.
I couldn't because you were...
Incapable.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was incapable of connecting 2 dots together, right?
Did he know you used?
Yeah, because very much like us, he did too.
Gotcha.
Right? And that's what I was about to get into. Not that I want to qualify anybody else, but it's very likely that he was one of us, right? At 27 years old, didn't have an ID, didn't have a cell phone, didn't have a car. Very much like the life I lived for months at a time, right? Just trying to scrap things together. And unfortunately, I had those things at that time, so I could be of service to him and make sure that he got what he needed, right? And so it was his birthday that... it was his birthday and he had no, ability to get into a bar. But I knew the bars in Austin that didn't card, so we got our little paychecks. We went and bought a whole bunch of weed, and smoked for hours before we went out to the bar. And of course, we went out to this bar that's way out in the woods because they don't card. And and I showed up that night, having been as broke as I had been up to that point, and was just really glad that I didn't have to drink the Wells whiskey, right? I could drink top shelf whiskey. And I made that very clear when I got at the bar. I was like, and I don't want your little highball glasses. I want it served in the beer pit, the beer glasses, the pints. And so, unfortunately, I only remember 3 drinks, right? I remember 3 drinks. I remember pulling out a napkin to make up the lineup because we had a tournament the next day, and that's it, right? And next thing I know, I wake up and I'm in the hospital. And I'm in the hospital, and my parents are there. My right leg is hanging in the air, and I have no idea what's going on, right? And so with my parents there, I said, hey, what's going on? What happened? And they were like, oh, everything's fine. You just got out of surgery. This is like a great example of the relationship I have with my parents. Everything is fine. You just got out of surgery. You're going to recover perfectly. And I'm like, but why was I even in surgery? And they were like, oh, you were in a car accident last night. And I was like, what do you mean I was in a car accident? They were like, yeah, you were, brought to the hospital in a helicopter. You were in a car accident. And it just hit me. I was like, well, is Jake okay? And my mom immediately went, yes, he's fine, right? Because it's very much like, don't stress Jesse out, right? Like, don't put any pressure on him whatsoever. But I just had it in me. I immediately went, because I saw her face. I said, would you be able to tell me if he wasn't okay? And she lost it. And so Jake didn't survive the car accident. So I was in a car accident and he did not survive. It was, I was in a complete blackout and just fell asleep at the wheel and hit a tree. And again, like, Jake didn't survive that accident, and I barely did. And it was one of those things where here I am today, right? Like, I can look back at it and realize, like, the intervention that occurred, right? Where I had this older vehicle that had 2 separate seatbelts, right? And I had this car for about 9 months, and never had I ever worn the lap belt, just because I barely wear a seatbelt as it is. I would always tell my passenger, hey, there's a second seatbelt. If you want to wear it, whatever, just want to give you a heads up. For whatever reason, in the blackout, I had that seatbelt on and Jake did not. And that's the only reason why I'm sitting here with you today, is because I happened to put that seatbelt on in a blackout, right? And he didn't, right? It's crazy to think about because I always go back, like, I still have scars on my hip where the seatbelt burned me, Yeah.
So you read on your mom's face that something's not okay. She tells you.
Right.
You just losing it?
I can't even recall, like, exactly what happened. I couldn't believe it, right? Because it was one of those things where I've always had good recall of the night before. So when something happened and I don't remember it, I don't believe it. So I was totally in shock. I didn't know how to react. I mean, I was also in and out. I was just out of surgery. I had a Dilaudid drip, for 5 days I was in the hospital. And it was just this very, like, foggy time of my life,
How old are you?
I was 22 years old.
Okay, 22. So, yeah, I think, that's the part that, just like being around you a lot, in the field and around people, we don't get there, right? Mm-hmm. Like, it's not that you don't want to, obviously, you just shed it. And I think, we've talked about it. I think, there's this stigma, right? I mean, there's this, like, thing, it's like people are scared to go there. They know, but I want to ask. And you're not going to hide it. You're very open with it.
Right.
And so I think we all appreciate you talking about it. But again, it's not shocking that you would talk about it, I guess is my point, is that.
Yeah, I mean, when I first got home, it was like, I would lead with the chin, so to say. I'd be like, oh, I just got out of prison. I had this accident, and someone told me, like, hey, you are not that person. You don't have to identify as the person that got into an accident. You're a man in recovery now, right? Like, that's how you identify. So it kept me from and it's something I've really worked on the last couple of years of discernment, right? Of, like, knowing when and who to tell things to, because I think that's why you and I are as close of friends as we are, because we're both like very open and honest and transparent and vulnerable, right? Like we can go there at any time with anybody because we're not ashamed of who we are anymore. But even then, it was like, I need you to know this because I want to take the judgment from you. I don't want to have you hear this from somebody else and you cast your own opinion without me showing you who I really am.
Right. So were you arrested in the hospital? I mean, obviously.
No. Yeah. So, there was this weird situation where like the hospital has the right to deny a blood sample to the police. And so that took a little while. So that was in May. I wasn't indicted for an entire month.
What'd you get indicted with?
Intoxicated manslaughter, which is only charged in Texas. Everywhere else, it's involuntary manslaughter. Yeah.
Okay, so you find that out.
Mm-hmm.
If I were you, I'd be like, "Hey, Mom, how do we run?"
Yeah.
I mean, that young, not now.
Totally.
But
well, that's part of my story too.
Okay.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think it's pertinent to know that after 5 days in the hospital, having experienced the responsibility of someone losing their life, that didn't change anything for me, right? If anything, I'm an AA guy, right? And so I can relate it very much to like the mental aspect of addiction and alcoholism, right? Where like any normal person would come out of the hospital and be like, oh, what have I just done? Me, it was like, look what just happened to me, right? Like the mental aspect of what we are up against would not allow me to accept that this was my fault. It was, I lost my friend. I lost my car, which was a big deal for me, right? My leg, I almost lost my right leg, right? Like it was those things. And so fresh out of the hospital, I had a buddy come over and we smoked weed on my parents' front porch. And I never used at my parents' house, right? But because I was so into this victim mode, it was like, I deserve to get high right now. And that was the first time that my dad had ever confronted me in front of my little sisters. And it was, again, it's one of those experiences looking back of how powerful it was. In the moment, it didn't resonate with me, but I'd committed to not smoke cigarettes, right? Because your body heals faster when you're not smoking cigarettes, right? And so I walk in, so I crutch inside because I'm on crutches. And my dad is like, what are you out there doing? And I was like, oh, just hanging out with Danny. And he's like, are you out there smoking? And I was like, not cigarettes, thinking like, oh yeah, this is totally okay. And he's like, are you kidding me? He's like, your life is on the line right now, and you're out there smoking. Again, this is first time I've ever had this experience where he's like getting on to me in front of my sisters. And
it's like he stopped and the moment of change and shift, and you did.
No. And for the first time ever, like I was always the type to just sit there and take lectures from my dad. Wouldn't say a word back. And in this moment, like this is the most powerful experience for me, because in that moment I said, don't you realize what I'm going through? I'm the one that lost my friend. I'm the one that has a banged up leg, right? Like very much like I deserve to live this way. So nothing changed, right? And then I get indicted. I drank a couple of times. My best friend still to this day of the last 22 years, he gets the ultimatum of going to treatment or turning himself in on the warrants that he has. And now that I'm indicted, I turn myself in. I get, I do 12 hours in jail. I get bonded out. But now my ace is about to go to treatment or jail, and I'm looking at 16 years with an aggravated sentence, meaning I'm going to have to do at least 8 years. Like that's what my reality was at the moment. So I'm thinking, I'm not going to get to see my guy for possibly 8 years. And so we go on a run. We go on a 5-day run. I think I'm smart enough to beat the system. I stop 5 days before I go to court. Apparently when you're on crutches, your body doesn't process and metabolize everything fast enough. So I show up to court, I'm on pretrial probation, and I test dirty for cocaine. And if you want to hear the real story, the funny part.
What, just lie to me?
No. The funny part of that story is when the probation officer came in, he simply said, "Why would you test positive for cocaine?" And I was like, "Oh, I have no idea. Like, that is wild." And I thought to myself, like, gotta figure this out. And I was like, I know what happened. My buddy came over and he had some cocaine and he said it was really good. I didn't do any, but I tasted it. And he just looked at me, he goes, okay. And then I think, man, my dad's in the lobby, I'm busted, right? Because I never got caught red-handed doing anything with my parents. And so
with what was like on the line.
Yeah, and like that was just, I mean, that was
addict, right?
That was in my mind. It was like over, right? Like, okay, that happened. What am I doing today? Which is just how I live my life. Yeah. And so the probation officer says, "Hey, is someone here to drive you?" Obviously, I didn't have a license at the time, and I was like, "Yeah, my dad's in the lobby." And he's like, "Okay, I'm gonna go check." And I'm thinking, he's gonna tell on me, for sure. He's gonna tell on me. And so we went out to the lobby. He just saw my dad sitting there and let us go. And me in my addiction was like, ha ha, got away with it, right? So I get a call the next day from my lawyer, and he says, and this is another one of those like looking back really powerful experiences, because he says, "Hey man, they revoked your bond." And I said, "Why?" He said, "Because you tested positive for cocaine." I was like, "Okay, what does that mean?" He goes, "I wouldn't be surprised if the sheriff doesn't show up at your door and arrest you tomorrow." And I was like, "Okay." And he's like, "What are you doing out there?" Right? And I was like, "What do you mean?" He's like, "Are you just out there partying?" And looking back, that's when I was like, what is a party? I haven't seen a party for years, right? I'm driving around aimlessly with buddies until we run out of gas because we have nowhere else to get high. But that was the only thing that we knew how to do. Get dope, get high, rinse, repeat, right? Whatever we could do to get by for that day. And in that moment, it's like, oh, to the court or to someone that doesn't live our life, cocaine positive UDS is like, oh, they're out there partying, right? And, you know, the reality is like I hadn't had a social life in a couple of years because of the lifestyle that I was living.
Every day was the same.
Right. And so like looking back on it, I was like, oh my God, like that was one of those moments that I could have like woken up to it. But of course I call said friend that I've been referring to and said, "Hey man, I got a couple of checks that I haven't cashed yet. I apparently revoked my bond. They could come get me right now if they wanted to. When my parents go to sleep tonight, I'm going to steal the car and drive to Canada." So this is 2008.
From Austin.
I printed up a Maps Quest all the way to Canada. Fortunately, I-35 runs through Austin, and it also goes straight to Canada. Okay. So it was a pretty straight shot. And I called Brent, a.k.a. Kiki, and I was like, "Hey, man."
Oh, this is Kiki?
This is Kiki,
okay.
Yeah. I was like, "Hey, man, this is the plan. I'm sure we can stop along the way and figure out how to make some money, but I'm leaving. Like, I'm not going to prison." And he was, you know, he had a moment of pause, but he was like, "Hey man, like if this is what we need to do, let's do it." I was like, "Okay, cool. But wait, let me call my bondsman," right? And fortunately, I'd never really been in trouble, so not like naive to the system. I call my bondsman and I'm like, "Hey," and this is major blessing, right? Like, "Hey, my lawyer just called and said my bond was revoked, you know, just wanted to check on that status." And he's like, "What's your name?" It always reminds me of Super Troopers because you could hear him on the keys and he's like, "Oh, Jesse McCraw." Like, "No, you're in good standing." He lied to me because he probably had that call many times that if I tell him his bond is revoked, he's gone, right? And so fortunately, I was naive enough to call Kiki back and be like, "They're just trying to scare me." That was my justification for everything. Like, "Oh, they're just trying to scare me. It's not real, right? They don't mean it." So yeah, scrapped the plan, made it to the next court appointment, and was incarcerated at that court appointment.
Damn.
And that was, September 3rd, 2008.
And you were in prison from then?
I was incarcerated from then until June 6th of 2012.
For 4 years?
3 years, 9 months.
Okay. So you go to prison. And this is where John and I had asked you about something. Mm-hmm. We can just kind of blow through these because I think I think a lot of people would want to ask this, right? I think
Sure.
most people. Okay, so were you scared? Like, you're
Yeah,
how old are
I
you?
mean,
20.
I'm 20. I just turned 23 July. So accident in May, 22, turned 23 in July, and this is September.
July 4th. Okay, and you go in. Are you like,
You know,
get beat up, or what's it going to be like? Am I going to be an outlier? Because you comment I'm trying to get you to.
Yeah.
That is interesting about size, right?
yeah.
You get there, and obviously you don't go right to prison. You go through court. Obviously,
I'm in county for 9.5 months, and that's why I use the term incarceration, because it is a different experience in county and in prison, you know. But again, I'm glad that I brought this up as early as I did, because still an eternal optimist, right? Like, now I'm just around potential friends, you know. I mean, this is how like puppy dog I am.
Right.
Like you're like, now I just get to live with dudes,
Right.
you know. And so it's funny to point out, like when I got home June 6, 2012, I got a sponsor, and he asked me what my sobriety date was, and I was like, today, right? Because this was like, you know, even though I had worked a program in prison, this was like, okay, there's gas stations. Like, I have a cell phone. I can call a dope man if like, this is the real test. And he's like, no, dude, you've been sober. Like, you deserve that credit. Like, what was the day that you got arrested? And I was like, oh, September 3rd, 2008. He's like, cool, that's your sobriety date. And I was like, nah, not then. He's like, I've definitely snorted some things since September 3rd, 2008. And so I say that because, like, that was me, right? I still showed up as the party guy. Like, oh, what is that pill? I bet if you crush it up, I'll snort it, right? And it was Thorazine, which is like a tranquilizer, you know, which is, looking back on it, very dangerous, not from like a health and wellness perspective, very dangerous to be tranquilized and vulnerable with a group of men that are there for possibly some really bad things, right?
Okay, so you get sentenced, you go to prison.
Yeah.
Okay, and what's your thought process going in?
So I was in county long enough to kind of, you know, so to say, get put on game, right? Like, I had an understanding of what to expect, and, you know, understood like what was going to be expected of me when I arrived. Fortunately for me, I had this experience where I got put into a 23-hour lockdown, like single cell. And that is when I made, you know, in AA, what they call like a third step decision, before I even truly knew what that was. But it was in that cell where I was for 4.5 months that I was like, truly, what has happened to my life? Right. Like, this is not who your parents raised you to be. But fortunately, like, I had the understanding that this is the best I can do under my own power. And so obviously I needed some help. And I had been to 3 AA meetings prior. And the one thing that I had remembered is that AA had worked for millions of people. And so I was like, hey, I drank and drove, I used dope, thinking that I wouldn't be the one person that was the outlier. If it's worked for millions of people, why would I be the outlier? So it was like just enough of an open mind to lead me back to AA with the understanding that if it's worked for millions of people, it would work for me too.
So were you introduced to 12 steps in prison?
In prison, yeah. So finally, August 2nd, 2009 is what I claim as my sobriety date. That is the day that I walked into my first AA meeting in Huntsville at the Holiday Unit, where 4 guys showed up and brought a panel. And, you know, me being the only person experiencing any trouble out of my family, as a felon, I was under the notion that I'd be breaking rocks the rest of my life. And it was these 4 guys that had multiple prison numbers, that had like businesses and success, and they were all smiling and laughing, and they all talked about AA in this very simple way. And I was like, man, if it's that simple, why won't it work for me? And so
and another one where you
totally.
And so those guys did what you're supposed to, is when you H&I, right?
Mm-hmm.
From your experience, strength, and hope.
And the cool thing is that without them, we don't have a meeting. They won't just let all the convicts
for free, just so people know. It's like
totally. They're volunteers. They're showing up on a Sunday
to a prison. Maybe talk to a room of 1 person, 0,
right?
Still that don't even want to be there.
Absolutely.
And it helps them in their recovery, right?
Absolutely.
It's a 2-way street.
Yeah.
So you hear them.
I mean, that has been also transversely. been the most powerful aspect of my recovery, is doing those H&Is at detox or treatment centers, or going to these places and talking about my experience to people that are early on. It's, you know, and I've done that purposely because those 4 guys did it. And I was incarcerated for almost another 3 years all around the Houston area. And those guys showed up at all of the units. I saw the same crew. So it was like very impactful that these guys were so giving.
Okay, so then I would imagine that as you worked the 12 steps, participated, you became a leader. I think you're kind of naturally...
I became Mr. AA for sure.
Yeah, because you more lead by example than by like loudness or, right. It's not like a physical presence. It's kind of a mental leadership. People want to be around.
Thank you.
Right. And I wasn't a compliment.
It is one of the greatest compliments of my life.
But it's true. I think if you ask a lot of people, within the work community, friends, socially, just kind of have that, right? John calls you the shaman. I think it's just your long hair. I think it's just this vibe. And so you become Mr. AA. People probably latch onto you. They want to learn about it. You're teaching it. That's your way.
Easy.
Did the experience in prison change when you became that guy?
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the most important aspects of recovery and having some success in recovery, I truly believe, is being honest, right? And that resonated with me very strongly in prison. And so that is what changed everything for me, because I was a pathological liar prior, right? Like if I could convince myself of this lie to get you to believe me, then I can get away with doing whatever I want. Yeah, absolutely. And so when that shifted, I mean, to the point to where, like, if there's a fight in prison, they lock down the dorm and they question everybody in the dorm as to what happened. Right. And if you say what happened, then you are considered a snitch, and that's also not good. So what I would do if I knew a fight was about to happen, I would literally go sit on the opposite side of the room with my back to the fight, so that when a guard asked me what happened, I could honestly tell them, I have no idea. I didn't see anything. I mean, that's how, because I couldn't lie anymore. I couldn't. There was one time in county jail where I woke up in the middle of the night, half asleep, going to the bathroom, and a guard came in and asked me a question, and all I could do was nod when I should have shook my head. And I went to the bathroom and I went, oh my God, I just told on somebody. Oh my God, I can't lie anymore, right? And it was like such a, almost like burning bush moment where I was like, this has drastically changed. So that was the biggest shift, right?
So then we could go for 3 hours. So you get out eventually, right?
Mm-hmm.
You're there for what?
June 6, 2012, 3 years, 9 months, yeah. I get out and I pick up 3 years, 2 months later.
Okay. Had you met Kat before?
Oh, yes.
I think this is a good...
So, I mean, a great story is how I ended up working the 12 steps, but essentially this 20-year-old kid, again, I'm 24 at the time, recognized me from dating his stepsister for 2 months between my junior and senior year. He got arrested, got bonded out, worked the program, worked all 12 steps, got a year of sobriety, and then got a 10-year sentence. He recognizes me in line signing up for a class and literally asked me, hey, do you want to work the 12 steps, right? By far, the only person, very likely, the only person in prison who had actually worked all 12 steps.
Right. Okay, so he's like this is the knowledge.
And so, long story short, we get put in the same dorm, which was where AA grew its roots in my heart, because me and him started meetings 3 times a week in that dorm. Okay. But he had a lot of little girlfriends riding him. And he, in prison, photos are the world.
Right.
And so he had this full photo album of a bunch of young 20s party girls. And so flipping through his photo album, I see a picture of a gal and I say, hey, this gal's really cute. What's her story? And he's like, it's my best friend. I'm about to send her a letter. You should send her a letter. Pen pals are a big thing. I fortunately had all of the support from my entire family. Kiki was writing me. My third baseman was writing me. Like, everybody was writing me. I didn't need a pen pal. So I was like, dude, I'm not that guy. I don't need that. He's like, really? She's a cool chick. You should just put a letter with mine and see what happens. So I did. That was August of 2010. Fast forward, her name is Catherine Kane, and that is the same Catherine that I just celebrated 10 years of marriage with. I do always had to add the caveat. It never was romantic while we were in prison. Me being me, I tried to flirt a little bit. She didn't reciprocate, but we kept writing. And it wasn't until, 4 or 5 months after I got home that we met each other in person, and we haven't been separated since.
That's incredible. So 2 things came out of prison.
2 things.
Your wife and your life.
Correct. 2 very important things.
Okay, so you get out. I'm
Yeah.
sure it's hard. I don't really care. So then when did you start working in the field?
So, yeah, again, there was some limitations on being a felon,
Right.
So one of my best friends from high school, his dad was a VP of this auto parts distributor company. And so I got a job in the warehouse like a month after getting home. I'm working in the warehouse for about 10 weeks, and they gave me an opportunity to be in a store. So I'm running like an outdoor power equipment store. Like I could have got you a much better weed trimmer yesterday if you would have called and asked for some advice. But I'm doing that, and it's a good old boy system. My direct report is a guy my age. I stood up in his wedding. He stood up in mine. Like, we became really good friends. And I'm thinking, like, this is my career, right? Like, I can work my way up to upper management through this system despite my past. And I got comfortable. But one thing I learned in prison, I didn't know anything about treatment. Kiki had been to treatment one time. Right. And other than the show Intervention, I didn't know anything about the treatment landscape. So a buddy in prison was like, I'm going to open a sober living when I get home. And I was like, what is that? And he's like, oh, and then there's this. I was like, wait, you can do this as a profession? Like, you can help people?
You're one of the rare ones, too, that a lot of people that are in our field, me included.
Like a product of the system.
Yeah, I wouldn't say institutionalized, like, they say that, you were truly institutionalized. Like they say, I grew up in the treatment world. It's like my background. Like, I knew all that. I knew it.
Totally.
SOP, sober living,
right.
early.
Right.
You're one of the rare ones, I think, that...
I didn't know anything about it. My parents didn't know anything about it, which is partly why they probably didn't help me to the best of their ability that they could. It had been, I guess, almost like 2.5 years that I'd been doing this. And because of that lovely H&I experience that we have, one of the cool aspects of my life and my recovery today is the fact that I've been playing softball with the same group of guys, Kiki included, for the last 12 years, okay. Right? And we, about a year after we started, we started having to ask other people to play. And so we asked this guy, Lane, to play. And so Lane comes and plays with us for a night. And I'm like, hey, but like, I'm going to Austin Recovery on Saturday. You want to come with me and do an H&I? We did that for a couple of months in a row. And next thing you know, a year later, he's like, hey, man, like, I work at this treatment center, and I think you'd be perfect for this position.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. And it was a direct care position. And it was in that moment, right, where, and this is, I think, something pretty notable for all of us in recovery, like, we can get really comfortable in the life that we created and not challenge ourselves as much. I totally forgot that I wanted to work in the treatment industry because of this comfortable life I made with this organization. And so that really shook me up. And so December 1st, 2014, I go work at a treatment center.
Wow. Okay. So that's, again, your story is, we're all unique, and then we aren't unique. There is a lot of unique aspects to how you ended up in this field.
Totally.
Okay. And I feel like, there's a lot of people that know you as Jesse from Driftwood.
Right.
And then I get to know you, and you're just kind of Jesse. You're just Jesse.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to ask you, we're going to wrap up soon. I've been asking my guests this.
Yeah.
If you could do anything, had the power to do whatever you want to combat addiction and mental health problems, what would you do?
Hey, that's a big question.
It can be, if you can make a law, you can dictate people's behavior in a way. Like, if there was something you thought we could do to help, eliminate our jobs, essentially. Maybe not eliminate,
yeah,
like help the world move to the next phase of trying to figure out it's not as stigmatized as people think. It's more common than you think.
Yeah, I that's where my mind goes, is the stigma. I think we're fortunate with our generation that we've seen that stigma decrease so much. I often consider, like, with the mental health side of things too, like, we've destigmatized that so much that now we're having this experience of where like people are completely self-diagnosing and think that they have everything. But I think a lot of it, right, is just access, providing access to more people. Like it's not lost on me that the treatment industry can only help so many people. And it's because like, what I've learned from the business side of things, to be able to provide excellent care, it costs money, and that's, I don't think that would ever change. But I do believe that, then I guess it would come down to laws and grants and really getting county and state and national help on really providing the appropriate funding so that our excellent providers, because there are beautiful, amazing people out there that are much more educated than us, that are doing great things from a therapeutic stance, from, a modality stance, that not people are able to experience. Right. Not many people are able to experience. And so, if there was an ability to pay people what they were worth while still being able to increase the access to care, yeah. I think that
I like that.
Yeah.
Okay. So I appreciate you coming on and sharing, your story again. It's the kickoff with this. So you get sober in rehab like Fritz. Yeah. And stories just...
Old Pepper's Alley.
He'll always remember. Okay, I have to make a statement. I will never lose to you straight up in golf again. Yesterday.
Well, it's happened the last 2 times, so let's see.
Okay. Okay. We didn't argue like you thought we would.
No, we didn't. It was very copacetic.
But I do appreciate you coming on.
Yeah.
And sharing, and being. You are one of my best friends. And
thank you, man.
You mentioned vulnerability.
I feel the same for sure, and I'm honored to be here for sure. Like I know I was given access to when this was all just a thought and idea, and my humble self was like, don't ask to be on. But I really wanted to be here, so I'm glad that I can.
Thanks.
I could work it out.
We wouldn't be here without Caitlin and Peter and Jan Osborne and Polycula Media, Junior and Haley. Our support dog originally. Yeah. But thanks, and appreciate it. I know you're driving home and you came in town for this. So
yeah,
thanks so much.
My pleasure. Absolutely.